intruder. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Mold Stories. I am so excited to be here today. I've been having this wonderful conversation with Heather Sunderland, and it has just been phenomenal to start to get to know Heather and to hear about her story. And I'm like, pause, we got to get this on recording. It's so exciting. It's really beautiful to talk to another professional and see how they're turning what has been really difficult into something to help other people. And so, with this, I want to begin by letting you know if you haven't seen me before, my name is Tammy Horner, and I'm a Colorado real estate agent. I'm a realtor, and I'm a healthy home advocate. I am now certified, conscious, healthy home certified realtor and working on my building biology certification. So I'm learning, and trying to build up my toolbox for all of you who are navigating environmental challenges, we'll say. I have been inspired to create this space to present an opportunity for my community of fellow survivors and those who are currently navigating this journey, where we can come share our stories, where they can share their story without the story and lesson being tied to a product or a service that you, the observer, need to invest in order to learn from or contribute to. I'm here to create a platform where people can be heard, where stories that are often heartbreaking and they're overwhelming and honestly they can be very scary, these can be held, where you, the audience, can hear unedited, unfiltered, real stories of real people all over the nation who are combating toxins, natural and unnatural, in our environment. You're going to hear about their journey and you're going to hear about where they are today. And so I thank you so much for joining us. And I ask you to listen deeply with an open heart, understanding that this isn't meant to be prescriptive, that it's not about right or wrong. It's an invitation to learn. And when we know better, we can choose to do better. Today I have mold story number 5. This is Heather Sunderland, who is a board certified functional health coach. Heather, I'm so grateful for your time. You're going to bring so much value already. We've had so much fun talking and just getting to know each other. Before we dig in, would you mind sharing with us a little bit about who you are, just as a human in your journey?
You, Tammy. And I just have to say, it's so beautiful that you're holding space for people because that is so healing when people's story is heard. I just remember that on my journey when people were asking to interview me, and nobody ever wanted to hear about my struggles or my story. And I thought, wow, this is so healing to be able to share it and just to have it received, nothing else. Nobody had to fix it. So it's just beautiful, that you're doing that.
Thanks for saying
A little bit about myself. I'm 61. I just turned 61 without telling my story.
that. Yeah, without
Yeah,
telling your story, just
your story. Married with one adult child, married 38 years.
mhm.
Um,
Congratulations. That's wonderful.
yeah, a Jewish follower of Jesus, so a Christian, but I think I ethnically look Jewish, and I've known the Lord for about 31 years. Um, and so that's an important part of my life. I love nature. I love the outdoors. It just makes my spirit sing to be outside in nature, hearing the birds sing, hiking, walking, kayaking, whatever I can do in nature just brings me great joy.
I love that. Thank you for that. We're here because we have a common tie, and this is really rooted in experience with mold. Where does your mold story begin?
Probably begins at childhood, but I didn't know it. But I found out a few years ago that my childhood bedroom had Stacky in the wall when my parents like changed the window years and years later. So I
Mhm.
had been living in a bedroom with black mold and didn't know it. And I had, you know, asthma, digestive issues, severe asthma, but I was functional. Um, so that's sort of where my story started. I just didn't know it at the time.
Mhm. And you said they just found this recently. Was there, when you think about the last many years, was there a point where you just had this aha moment and recognized that mold was a player?
It was December. No, it was like the summer I was graduating health coaching school, or I had just graduated. It was during COVID. I'm not sure like the date,
Hmm.
but I was very sick in health coaching school and had developed I had Lyme disease that had resurfaced, and
Hmm.
Graves' disease that had was new, which is hyperthyroidism. And I had active mono all in the same month. It was like April during COVID. And in the summer, a colleague said to me, I think you're living in mold. I think maybe, did you have a history of water damage exposure? I think you have SIRS. And I'm thinking, what the heck is that? And went ahead and followed through with some of her suggestions and found out that my new build in the desert did actually have some building material mold, and not awful. I did heal in this house, and that I did actually have SIRS, and I was pretty sick at that time. And it wasn't just the active Lyme or the Graves. Like I was down to 10 foods. I had SIBO. I had been down to 10 foods for 2 years, but I wasn't losing weight. I was gaining weight, which made no sense because I felt like I was barely eating. I was having trouble walking, standing, ligament laxity, couldn't hold a chiropractic adjustment, like just a little weird, crazy, over the top symptoms on top of neuropathy and pain, which is more classic with Lyme, the Lyme piece. Um, so that was the aha moment when my colleague and friend, now friend, Bobby said, I think you have mold and SIRS. And I did the testing and I did. But what the doctors did to get me well for me didn't shift anything. And should I continue to?
Please, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, so my doctor was very supportive of me just sort of walking away and doing my thing. And I found what was called a group of coaches who were doing a regenerative approach who had mold and SIRS, where there was a very big focus on nutrition and how to eat to detox and how to eat to alkalize. And, for me, it was huge. I started to see shifts the third day on a protocol, where my diet started to expand. And I was detoxing and I was having symptoms, but my diet went from 10 foods to 11 and then 12 and 13. And I'm like, I was too brain fogged and too sick to really understand it. But at around 3 months, the brain fog lifted and I didn't need to see. I had such ligament laxity. I was at the chiropractor 3 times a week for 8 years because they didn't know why I couldn't hold. And now I understand I couldn't hold because I was inflamed. I was toxic from pathogens and mold and other toxins as well. 3 months on this protocol, I never needed to go to the chiropractor again. And I was like, it's pretty crazy because I could open a door and go out of alignment. I could sit upright at my desk and go out of alignment. I lived in a zero gravity chair for years. I went to health coaching school, tilted back in a zero gravity chair. Um, and then people were seeing me out kayaking and doing things, and they're like, what the heck just happened? So it was pretty dramatic, but it was gradual, right? It happened over time. 3 months, I didn't need the chiropractor. 6 months, I wasn't using assistive devices to walk because I had a lot of trouble walking and standing. And it was like 23 months. My doctor said, I went back to her and she's like, you don't have Lyme, you don't have mold, you don't have SIRS. But I still had a lot of toxins and pathogens in my body.
Yeah.
And even though I didn't meet the criteria for any of those, I still spent the next 3.5 years releasing a lot of garbage in my system that I sort of couldn't stop. It was like I got the ball rolling, changing my internal terrain. And then my body just kept releasing and releasing and releasing.
Yeah. It's so interesting because there's a couple of different things that you're speaking to that really resonate for me. One is the multiple different infections there, and there's a word for this. Is it co-infections?
Yeah, and the truth is, I mean, anybody who has mold toxicity, SIRS, Lyme, it doesn't really matter the label. there's multiple factors. Nobody just has mold. Nobody just has Lyme. And I think that's the sort of the problem with what I see happening with practitioners is they're just focused on killing Lyme, or they're just killing, killing, killing. And
Mhm.
they're not changing the terrain, they're not nourishing, they're not addressing toxicity. They're just focused on killing or binding, and they're just missing other pieces like the nervous system and drainage pathways in the gut, and relationships, connection, community, sleep. Like I had to do all of it to get well. Focusing on one thing helped me improve a little when I first had the Lyme, but I wasn't well. I
Mhm.
was still disabled. And I didn't understand it was because I was still had a very high parasite load, very high bacterial viral load, and I didn't know about the mold piece. Everybody missed the mold piece until I knew I had mold. But all my Lyme literate medical doctors, holistic doctors, everybody missed it. I mean, and I was undiagnosed Lyme, chronic active Lyme 22 years, and active Bartonella 22 years from the age of 30. And it really wasn't until I was like 50, 56, 55 and a half that I was diagnosed with SIRS. And when I found the regenerative approach for me, that's when everything shifted. And I walked away from my doctors. I still have the same doctor because she supported what I was doing. So if I had an issue, I would go to her, but it was just like, hey, I know I can't figure this out. I know I need your help to tweak this issue, or this part of the healing journey that I'm on. But it wasn't like her protocol helped me get well. She was just there as a support when I needed her. Just
Yeah.
like if I needed a lymph massage, I'd get a lymph massage kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it was because she supported me and she wasn't upset that I wasn't following her protocol that wasn't working for me.
Yeah. Everybody's so unique. And we talked about this a little bit before we came on. We have the co-infections that are all kind of playing a part in how you're feeling. And like you said, there's all these different layers. There's toxins, there's parasites, there's diet. I heard you say community, right? There's this big holistic picture. And when we're taking a look at most people, probably everyone, we just don't, not everybody recognizes it fully in their story. It is so dynamic being able to see all of the different pieces that play a role and realize that you can't maybe necessarily attack them all at once, but they are all a part of the process of healing.
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't have gotten well if I didn't address, sorry, my voice is just raspy in the morning, but I
Okay.
couldn't have gotten well if I didn't address the whole picture.
Yeah.
Um, and for me, that is what made the shift, was addressing the whole picture. And food was a huge part of that for me. People are different. My husband had SIRS. He didn't have Lyme, and he was much more functional than I was. He worked full time. He didn't seem sick, right?
Mhm.
He had presented very differently, metabolic syndrome, skin rashes.
Mm.
Um, those were, and some fatigue on the healing journey. My journey just looked very different, and I was very disabled, even though we both met the criteria for chronic inflammatory response syndrome, and we both had lived in mold.
Mhm.
Um, when we were married, we had water damage in our house in Pennsylvania. We had a leak. We didn't know how to address it. I didn't know mold was an issue. So I don't know about his exposure in childhood. I was exposed in childhood, and my room had it. And then when we got married, our house had it a few years into.
Mhm.
Um, but I have no idea the level of exposure. So people's level of exposure is very different. Their genetics are different.
Sure. When I think about like you're expressing, there's a time when you were a child you were exposed, and then there's another time later that you were exposed, and those are just the points that you can recognize. But it could have been in schools, it could have been in stores, it could have been on food, it could have been, right? Like,
Right. Yeah. I mean, I usually say I was exposed from 3 on because
mm,
that's what my parents, when I told them 5.5 years ago I had mold and SIRS, that's when they said, "Oh, your childhood bedroom had stacky." And when we changed the windows sometime when I was growing up, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that's why I was asthmatic."
Yeah.
and on 6 medications and had sinus infections and, it just, and digestive issues. Like I had irritable bowel and I had a list by the time I was in my 40s, I had a list of like 20 illnesses,
Yeah.
and we didn't know Lyme yet. We didn't know mold. And it really, everything I had got reversed.
Mm,
Everything I was able to reverse. One new thing, which I haven't really shared a lot, came up in the healing process. And my thyroid, which I had Graves, I reversed it, but my thyroid swung the other way. And I'm in the process of restoring my thyroid and trying to get off the medication. And I'm seeing results in what I'm doing, but I've only been doing something for about a few days. So
hmm
I'm sort of excited to get rid of that last label that I have. Um,
Wonderful.
but really happy that I got rid of the 22 labels that I did have.
Yes. It's
That's a
so
win.
powerful. That's a huge win. Are you kidding me? There's so
Yeah.
many of us that walk through life having these labels define who we are and the life experience that we have, right? And to know that there's a choice, right? That there's
And,
pathways, we just got to find our way to it that works for us.
and there's a root. Usually there's a root. I had labels like fibromyalgia,
Mm,
chronic fatigue, neuropathy. I mean, there's typically a root cause, and a lot of times that root cause can be addressed if somebody has the desire and the bandwidth to do it, right? Some people don't,
right.
or they're, at an age where they're like, yeah, it's going to be too much energy and work.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable. I'll accept this. And I had got to that place of acceptance. I didn't know I could get well. I had really learned to accept my limitations, and I had a lot of limitations. I was like homebound for 10 years. Um, And I was shocked when I started meeting people once I found out I had SIRS who were healing, and I didn't really believe it. And I always say, like, you need to believe, but I didn't believe it until I started on this regenerative nutrition protocol. And I started to see these big shifts to me, my diet increasing, um, when I wasn't seeing shifts with what I was doing with my physician after months and months and months. And I thought, oh my gosh. And at 3 months, when my brain cleared, I thought, I think I understand why this is working. And, but it was a long ride. It was a
hmm
long ride, but I had no doubt in my mind that I was healing and that I would get there. And I remember my husband used to say, are you really sure you're healing? Because you've got so many symptoms in the process. And I would say, stop saying that. That's just my journey. I have a lot leaving. So I had a lot of symptoms, but it would annoy me to no end because he saw me struggling in the process of healing, but he wasn't seeing that I wasn't walking with a cane. I wasn't needing a walker anymore. Like I wasn't sleeping in the zero gravity chair. Like
Yes.
he was just, yeah. So he would say that, and I would just say, oh, be quiet. Like I know, I know that I'm not sick anymore or that I'm getting better and better, even though I have symptoms. And for a lot of people, that's really hard when they have symptoms in the process of healing. They think, oh my gosh, I've got neuropathy. The Lyme must be back. The Bart must be back.
Right.
And sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes it's just things are leaving and they're irritating the system.
Yeah.
And it's sort of different, for everybody. But I've seen a lot of people panic when they have symptoms.
Sure.
And I don't know, symptoms to me, they're part of the process and they're different for everybody.
Yeah, it's so interesting to me too because it takes time to get to walk the path of healing. My journey wasn't as symptomatic, but it took a long time for me to get to this point from the point of recognizing what had happened and the idea of peeling back the layers of the onion and identifying all the pieces, right?
We don't want that.
Right. Yeah.
We just want to be better. We want to be on the other side. I think there's a certain point where I just had to let go and sort of let God
Mm-hmm.
and trust the process and let go of my timeline. When I first moved to Arizona, I'm in Arizona, like a Pennsylvania girl my whole life, and I wanted to hike and walk out here, and I have a mountain about a mile and a half from my house, and I'd go out of alignment just standing for like 3 minutes. So And I would go to the chiropractor and he said, "Oh, in a few months, we'll get you in alignment. You'll be fine." 4 years later, still going to the chiropractor.
Yeah.
And and it was really the toxicity. But yeah, so it was just, I've learned sometimes I have to let go of my timeline. And I'm thankful that I found out why I was having this ligament laxity and why I couldn't walk and I couldn't stand and I couldn't hike. And now I can hike and I don't go out of alignment. But it really took a lot longer to get the answers and to understand
Yeah.
what was going on. And in the world of mold and SIRS, it's crazy. There are a lot of people who have ligament laxity, or they have Ehlers-Danlos, or they think they have Ehlers-Danlos because that's what they thought I have. And mold and toxicity will make it worse,
Mhm.
because you're inflamed.
Yeah.
So it's sort of crazy how different people are impacted.
Yeah, for sure. There's a pretty wide band of symptoms. And so I didn't go through the food sensitivities. Do you want to talk a little bit more about what that was like for you?
So I actually had SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, methane SIBO. So wasn't like food sensitivities, but I had just insane bloating, constipation, and bloating with so many things. Like something had pepper in it. My gut would bloat like I was 6 months pregnant, garlic, onions. So I tried all the things as a coach, like eating low FODMAP, but it wasn't addressing the root of why I had the SIBO. And taking things for SIBO to kill didn't work because I wasn't changing the internal terrain or the toxicity that was damaging my gut. So really, I had to do all of it for the SIBO to go. Um, and for me, the approach that I use, the regenerative approach, is what shifted that, what my doctors did with prescription antibiotics and binders didn't move the needle because we weren't addressing the nervous system, we weren't opening pathways, we weren't nourishing my body. But I don't know when the SIBO ended. It was just sort of like my diet and everything just, and by a year I could eat, anything I wanted, but I never retested. It was like I just didn't have, um, had a lot of bloating on the healing journey because I had a lot of pathogens in my gut that had to
Hmm.
die.
Yeah.
Um, but it wasn't SIBO, if
Mhm.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
I was the queen of over the top symptoms, and my husband was not.
So you had both extremes in the same household.
Yeah, I was just,
Yeah.
my friends who were watching the journey were just sort of like, they didn't know what to say because they saw me getting better, but I was just so symptomatic in the process of things leaving that
Yeah.
I think it was hard for them to know what to say or what to do because they still saw me struggling with the process,
Yeah.
even though I had joy and peace because I knew I was getting better. I had a lot of nerve pain on the healing journey.
Mm.
Every time something left, pathogen, toxin, I don't know why. My spine had a lot of issues prior to illness, like 12 herniated bulging discs. I
Oh.
don't have any of that anymore, but I think that was like my weak area. So anytime something left or the pathogens and toxins were hanging out in my spine, my nerves would get irritated and I'd have pain down both legs.
Mhm.
And it was just made it really hard to sleep.
Yeah.
Sometimes it made it very uncomfortable. I could walk. It just made it really uncomfortable if your feet were, screaming. But it wasn't like when the BART was active it was different and it was stuff leaving. So we're all unique in what it looks like,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah.
And I figure my story is my story,
Yes.
right? And other people, your story is yours. And some people might be encouraged, I hope, by my story that you can get well after 28 years of sickness and disability and being home 10 years. It wasn't hard. It wasn't a pleasant process, was the
Yeah.
best way to describe it.
Yeah.
Um, but having purpose, because I was health coaching people, it really gave me purpose. So having purpose when you're healing, whatever that is, if it's doing something you love or being involved in a ministry, or if you feel like you can work, I never could have worked leaving the house, with
Yeah. Right.
my healing process. Um, but it really gave me purpose. And I think it made the journey so much more joyful to have a reason to get up because I was helping people.
Yeah. It feeds you back, fills your cup. And there's healing in that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think as I've gotten healthier, um, I still want to work with clients, but I have a limit to how many I can handle in a day because I want to get out there and I had 28 years where I was pretty limited. I want to get out there and participate in life, in ways that I hadn't been able to.
I love that. I love that. I love that. It's not, you can't necessarily replace the time that you missed, but now you get to completely create what's in front of you. It's absolutely wonderful. My brain keeps going back to how did you find the mold in the house that you're in?
It's gonna sound a little weird. Well, we worked with Larry Schwartz, who's in Chicago remotely. And we did like an Ermi and Stacky and Aspergillus niger came up on, and he said that's building material mold. And we like pulled up all the carpet in the house and did some recommendations to vent the house because we were in a new build in the desert so that, they're so tightly made that there would be hot Arizona air in the summer coming in and being pushed out and cool in the winter. But it was, I don't know, a few years ago, I do muscle testing in kinesiology, and I recognized when I go to a hotel and I react, I started to learn I can muscle test if I'm being exposed. And I can muscle test like low exposure, moderate, or high. And I started doing that with clients, and I'm like, let me see if I can muscle test where in the house this is coming from. So I muscle tested that our guest room had mycotoxins, and I was getting low levels, and that it was related to Stacky. But then I found out about an air mycotoxin test through Respirair through Andy Lynn, and we got the test, and I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this because I'm pretty positive when I tell clients they have mold or mycotoxins or actinos in their home, when I muscle test and they test to verify, I've been right. And so I like trust, so
Yeah.
we did the mycotoxin air test and I put it against the wall where I was muscle testing and we got mycotoxins from Stacky. Um, and I think we got a moderate level of mycotoxins from Stacky. So it's a room of our house we don't use. I don't react in the room. I used to spend a lot of time sleeping in that room if I was tossing and turning at night. Now I'm like, yeah, I don't want to. My body can process it, I think, without a problem, but I don't want to do that to my body. It's done a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
Um, so I just sort of keep the door to that room closed. The rest of our house has been fine. And one day, if we have a lot of money, maybe I'll explore opening up that wall and
Yeah.
figuring out, where it is. But and I used to have friends when they were sick who'd walk in the house and they'd be like, Heather, I have my Stacky symptoms or I have my mold symptoms. And I'm like, that's why I tested my home, not because my doctor told me, because I'm like, I'm in a new build in the desert. She didn't explain that new builds could have building material mold.
Yeah.
But our hurts me too was an 8,
Okay.
right? So everybody's different what they can handle. My clients hurts me too. I don't typically see any under 15. And a lot of my clients are 22 and above.
Yep.
So when I looked at our house, my friends who were health coaches who had SIRS and mold were like, you have Stacky, you gotta leave and you gotta get rid of all your stuff. And I'm like, I don't think so. I had been working with clients and I was like hiking and kayaking and I'm like, I said, I do not feel the Lord leading me to react in fear and to leave my house.
Oh,
Not with these, not with these numbers that I'm seeing and not with where my body is. And I consulted with, oh, I can't think of her name, Andrea Fabry in Arizona to
okay.
get her. She's a health coach who their family had mold in Arizona. And I did a consult and she said, Heather, look at where your life is and where you were physically. Um, but my friends who were coaches in the regenerative world all like leave and get rid of your stuff. And I'm like, did I bring this with me? Are we sure? Because I had water damage in my house. I just didn't know. Do I
Yeah.
bring it with me? So sort of a crazy answer to
Yeah,
your
no, my
question.
gosh, I love it. I'm so glad that you're sharing this because, our community is so wound in fear. We have a lot of fear. We're not in control of our environments, the environments we've been in, we've raised our kids in, that we grew up as children in, our parents are in, are so sick. And we're trying so hard to get it all under control, and it's so loaded, it's expensive. It's,
Yes.
we're told that if you don't completely get rid of it out of your home, it's a losing
Wow.
battle, like you're going to be sick. And this is what you're sharing right now is so powerful. I'm just going to say it in the simplest Tammy terms. You are living in active, maybe old.
Well, I mean, there's water. I mean, there's some sort of building material mold, in our guest room or in that wall, that side of the house.
Yeah, and
Um,
you're healing.
no, I've been told I don't have SIRS, I don't have mold, I don't have Lyme, I don't have Graves, I don't have SIBO. I'm
Yep.
in repair mode from the 28 years of being sick, where my body's now repairing my lymph and my immune system. And so it's a phase where I have to eat differently. I need protein. Like it's been very different than the
Yeah.
healing phase. But yeah, everybody's home has some level of toxic mold. And so I tell clients, you have to listen to how your body's responding. And most of the people I see, I'm not seeing people with these numbers, right? I'm seeing people. But I have noticed when I have a client who say they were exposed to really high levels of toxic mold, well, then they're super sensitive to re-exposure, where I don't know what I was exposed to, what level, and I seem to react when I muscle test that I'm being exposed at moderate levels. We've been to like hotels and didn't know why I couldn't sleep on vacation and why I was up all night peeing and I got no sleep whatsoever.
Mhm.
And my husband was just tired and didn't want to leave the room. And that's when I started muscle testing when we went places because I don't seem to react at low levels.
Okay.
But typically, and it may have to do with what you're being exposed to and how many different molds and mycotoxins. So I think people have to listen to their body. And if your nervous system dysregulated, you're going to react, much more so to so many things. But like if a friend has a new car, and they open the door of the car and I'm 10 feet away, like I can smell those fumes and my brain, I don't get symptoms. If I was sitting in the car, I think I'd start wheezing, but I'm like sort of knocked over by the chemical scents and smells in the supermarket.
Mhm.
But I don't have like a headache or if I'm there a lot, I'll start to wheeze. Um, or have some sort of lung kind of reaction. But people are just so different, what they can handle re-exposure to. But as we clean up the internal terrain, as the nervous system calms down, as the drainage pathways are open, even if you're someone, I have all the poor genetics for detox, your body can handle exposure, right? God made our body to detox. So it takes time for people to get the system moving and flowing and things moving out, but everybody's different what kind of hit they can handle.
Yeah.
And some people right, they don't even notice symptoms when they're exposed. Um, and other people I feel like I'm a mold dog, at
Yeah.
least at the moderate level. So yeah, people are so different. So, and if I have people in mold, I really try to tell them like there are things we can do. Um, if we can't fix the environment right now, we can still help the nervous system open up the drainage pathways. Maybe find, some rooms in the house that are safe rooms that we know the exposure level is lower and getting out in fresh air. So there's always stuff we can do. But I think when we're in exposure, you're tired, you're not feeling good, like all of those things, it's overwhelming.
Yes, it's hard to think. Yeah,
Yeah.
that brain fog is a real thing. It really will slow you down and impede your ability to problem solve. Um,
When I moved here and I didn't understand what was going on in a new house and had all my stuff to unpack, I would look at the linen closet and look at the box of linens and I'm like, why can't I put it away? Like I didn't know what to do with it. And it was weird. We had an acquaintance who I had came out, a few people who came out and unpacked part of our house. And
Oh,
I didn't know why I couldn't do it. Like I remember even sitting in a class learning how to use Canva, and they'd tell you like step one, step two, step three. You couldn't even do step one. And
hmm.
I didn't know why. I'm like, what's wrong with me? Am I losing my mind? I didn't know to call it brain fog.
Yeah.
um, but I literally remember like, why can't I just put things away? Like, why do I struggle to even know where they go?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a weird time when you're in that level of sickness. It's just so strange and overwhelming, and it's almost blinding, right? To what everything is happening, or we get like this weird tunnel vision. Most people I know are like they can only really manage and take in what's directly in front of them or most pressing. Did you get
It
that?
was weird because I think when we first got out here, and I was like, my back and spine were a mess. And I really think it was the inflammation.
Hmm.
Um, and I had so much pain. And we're in a new house and we're trying to get everything hooked up and unpack. And I don't know, somehow we did all that. Somehow
Yeah.
we did all that. And I moved across the country in 3 weeks from Pennsylvania to Arizona in a house I'd been in 30 years. And I'd just come off Valium, I'd come off all these drugs. And I was so dysregulated and not sleeping at all right before we moved out here. Just so many crazy aspects to my story that could be unpacked. And I think I don't know how I did it. Looking back, my family was like, I don't know how you moved across the country in 21 days and unpacked a house you had been in 30 years. Not sleeping probably helped, me pack and get rid of stuff. But I was a deer in headlights when I came to Arizona, like so dysregulated. So I had never been anxious until I went through Valium withdrawal. I would say, oh gosh, if you can avoid going on benzos at all costs, because the cost of coming off them and the suffering and coming off them was probably worse than healing from Lyme and mold.
Wow.
That
Yeah.
that was probably harder for me than the healing from Lyme and mold, although both have not been pleasant.
Yeah. I'm sorry you went through that.
Well, I'll tell you the good part of it, and I'm thankful when we go through stuff and God uses it to help somebody else.
Mm.
It just makes it worthwhile because I've had patients who are in mold and their doctors are trying to get them off benzos. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, to have to do both at the same time, I always encourage the patient to talk to the doctor about what you can handle and why. And
Yeah.
if you can choose the path forward, because I was forced, I was on like fentanyl and all these drugs because of not knowing I had Lyme. And then they went through that phase of like no fentanyl, no benzos. When the doctors put me on them together, and they're like, you have to be off it in 6 days. And my pharmacist was like, you've been on it 17 years. You can't just come off it. And I had to find a doctor who would let me taper. And it took me 3 years to get off it. And I didn't sleep for 4 years. So it's just sort of crazy. Never want to go through that again. Um,
Yeah.
but I don't know. I think when you go through those things and I look back and I think, I guess I have strength and
Mhm.
perseverance because and I'm only telling you parts of the story. It's
Sure.
been,
Yeah.
right? It's been intense. And hopefully other people who are listening to this, realize you're not alone if you're struggling, whether your symptoms don't match mine or they don't match what Tammy's symptoms were. You're not alone in the struggle. There are a lot of people out there who are struggling with invisible illnesses that people don't see, what the day-to-day life is. And you got to make yourself the priority in that kind of season,
Yeah.
and take care of yourself, and other people don't have to get it, what you're doing or why you're doing it. Validation is a wonderful thing in this mold, in this community. But I didn't get validation in the world of my friends and my family. Nobody really understood. It's really been in my relationships with other coaches and patients that for the first time in my life, I got some validation about the crazy ride I went on.
How did that feel?
Getting the validation,
Yeah.
Oh, so affirming. Like I said early on, people were asking to interview me on social media like five years ago. And I was like, you want to interview me? But when they were so kind and they asked questions and they wanted to hear my story, I thought, this is so healing. And I listened to a lot of people through my journey of healing. Like, I don't know if you've heard of Christian people. Joni Eareckson taught it. She was paralyzed at 16. And so a lot of people who had a lot of suffering. And I've heard them say they get to share their story and people hear it. So it is sort of validating. And so when that started to happen, I was like, wow, nobody ever wanted to hear what was going on with my struggles. And my poor husband lived with me being sick most of our married life.
Mm.
So, so it was just like, wow, now I think now it's not the same because I've shared it a lot. But in the beginning, it was just like, thank you for letting me share. Thank you for holding space, and people were just always very kind, that whoever was interviewing me. And
Yeah.
it was like, I had never experienced that.
Yeah.
So it's very healing what you're doing to give people a space to share, to be heard, because a lot of people don't know what to do
Mhm.
when I tell people who have been through hard stuff, if I tell them a little bit of what a week was like, they'll just look at me blankly. And I'm like, it's not me, it's them. They don't know how to respond. But I'm like, they didn't take my hand. They didn't say, oh, I'm sorry. Could I pray for you? I'm sorry to hear that. Like just nothing because I looked, even when I couldn't walk, to them, I looked healthy, or if I was saying I was in terrible pain and not sleeping, I think to them, it's not the same as cancer or something where you see a wheelchair. And I had those things, but people just, when I was young, they didn't get it because we didn't have a name for it
Hmm.
when I was in my 30s.
Right.
So, yeah.
Think of this in sort of in association with fibromyalgia. When I was coaching, it was really becoming more heard of. And then they started talking a lot more about invisible illnesses and what that's like, because on the outside, there's a real disconnect. If you're not going through it, it's very difficult to even imagine what people are going through in these types of illnesses.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was labeled fibromyalgia for 20 something years and it was really, I mean, and I think fibromyalgia it's not a root cause, right? It's a
Right.
label and there's usually a root cause to why somebody has, and it may be different, and it's multifaceted. It's never one thing, but a lot of people that I see with fibromyalgia, it's toxicity, it's Lyme, it's pathogens, could be trauma. Um, yeah, a lot of pieces to unpack.
Yeah, for real. It's interesting as we're talking, I have this list of questions, right? And organically they just kind of come through. And so I keep peeking at them. I'm like, nope, we went through that. We went through I think it's fun. Um, you've spoken a little bit about community and the impact that this community has had for you in being able to be validating. What else did you glean from community?
I, from community who understood or just from friends?
Any community, yeah.
Well, I think in the beginning of my healing journey, it was really important to me, even though it was intense, my healing was intense. It was important for me to get out with friends, not always friends who got what I was going through, but, um, and I did that. I made sure like once a week. Now, as the journey went on, because it was a long journey, I had about 2 years where I could not.
Mhm.
It was so intense, the lack of sleep, the pain, that I was like, I just need to hunker down, continue to work, take care of the house. And if I see friends, great. If I don't, I'm just starting to get back out there with people. Because even though I wasn't sick, the layers of what was letting go was just intense. So friendship was important. If it wasn't in person, it was on the phone. Like having certain people, and it may not be a lot, who are in your corner who you can share. I was sick this summer with Giardia. I was sick for 6 months, vomiting. It was a very dark, I had H. pylori and we missed that I had Giardia. And I think I got them together from somebody not wash, I think from somebody not washing their hands. And I
Sure.
touched something and I didn't know my gut was already slightly compromised. And I was just violently ill. And we were treating H. pylori, but I was having the Giardia and H. pylori for me had identical symptoms. And then we did a test and realized I had Giardia too. Um, and that's when I started to make progress. But I was just so sick for so long, and I was so nauseous and dry heavy and cold sweats. And I just sat all day and did nothing because if I moved, it was just really a weird, dark season. But I had certain friends that weren't local that I reached out to because my local friends didn't even know what to, just they had seen so much, they didn't know what.
Oh,
So I had like a few friends who I could just say, could you pray for me here? This is like a really tough season. I've been through a lot, but yeah, throwing up was like the hardest for me pain I've been able to endure. But that was like, oh my gosh, Lord, I cannot deal with this. And then I thought, okay, I got to learn how to deal with this because
yeah.
it went on for a really long time.
Wow.
Um, but knowing who you can call to be in your corner, even if it's just one person, or two. And I did lean in really tightly to God in that season because it felt dark. So did the Valium withdrawal. It felt very dark and oppressive. And it went on for a long time. So that's always sort of been my go-to to lean into a few close human bodies and lean into the Lord and ask Him, what do you want to teach me? What are
Yeah.
you trying to teach me? I will tell you, after I came out of the Giardia as a coach, everything I've been through has helped me, because then I started getting people with GI issues, and the Giardia shut down my motility and my GI tract. So I just learned so much that I had to put into practice on myself in the gut. Um, and I had to do everything, like just with the other stuff to heal. I had to do the nervous system work and the vagal nerve tone and the motility supports. But I got really good at doing GI stuff then too. Um, so it's like everything I've been through, it was, used to help other people. Um, that's sort of how I try to look at it. Sometimes when you're going through it, you can't look at it that way in
I
that
know.
moment because you're too
Yeah.
sick.
It's
But
kind
I
of
sort
like,
of now know anything I go through, it's going to benefit somebody somewhere along the way, even if it's just empathy,
yeah.
that you meet someone. And I've met people with Giardia and H. pylori who were vomiting all day long, which was not me. I would, vomit a few times a day, have 20 bowel movements a day, but it wasn't. But I was just like, oh my gosh, I was lucky. I didn't end up in the hospital. So yeah,
Wow. A very intense
crazy.
journey. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
a lot of
it has
things that
it
you,
has been. And I feel like I've had joy in it because I knew nothing was permanent too. I mean, I went through thinking I was permanently ill and learning how to have peace and joy within the limitations and boundaries. Once those boundaries are lifted, I almost have to be careful not to be unappreciative of how far I've come, because I had a lot of years where I really struggled to walk and to stand, a lot of years, like decades. And now I think I take it for granted and I'm annoyed, if I can't do something that I want to do. So I don't want to lose that gratitude. And sometimes we can. I
Mhm.
have to remind myself how far my on my birthday, which was just a few days ago, my husband and I went up to Prescott, Arizona. It's a beautiful area, and we were looking at this gorgeous lake with boulders. And I just started to cry because I thought, I cannot believe how far I've come. And we like hiked part of the lake and it was, down a rocky trail. And I've been able to hike for a while, but the journey's been so intense just for some of that intensity to have lifted and for us to be able to get away was just like you probably know those feelings where you have those mountaintop feelings when you've been through a really intense journey and something really small can just feel really special.
Yeah, absolutely. The gift and the reminder of where we've come from and where we are now, even if on days where I'm not my best, which I have
Right.
days,
Right.
where it's like, what the heck? In those days, it's like, yes, but it's been. 30 days plus since the last time I felt like this. And that is significant because it was 5 days a week, at one point. And so look how far you've come. And there's momentum and perseverance and a refreshed commitment to continue to heal in that recognition, right? The gratitude fuels that forward motion and trust in your process, right?
Right. Yeah, and the process of healing is not, we've all heard it's not a straight line. We want it to be this,
Right.
right? But it is so my journey was just so like if you just looked at the symptoms, you would think I was backsliding, but I
Sure.
wasn't, and I knew I wasn't.
Yeah.
But so it's just so hard sometimes for people because if you've been on the journey a long time, it can feel discouraging. The last 2 years, especially after the Giardia, it took me a long time to get my stamina
Mm.
back, and I was still healing. Like I was detoxing and healing from these two stomach infections
Same
or
thing.
parasitic and bacterial infection,
Uh,
and it was just like, okay, I just sort of got to let go of my expectation of what I've had to let go of my expectation of what life should look like and I have to say though, amidst all the hardship, I'm amazed at some of the beautiful things that have come about from the journey. Like I've had opportunities to speak. I'm speaking at a healthy home conference and I'm speaking at a CellCore conference on mold and SIRS, which has been a prayer of mine that we can educate practitioners to better recognize it. And that's what we're talking on, my colleague and I. So there's like doors that are opening amidst this crazy journey that's not totally finished. I think the hardest parts I hope are over. Um, and this last part of repair work is more fatigue, with the level of repair.
yeah.
um, but yeah, but I look at the opportunities that have been coming and I'm like, if I hadn't been on the journey, I wouldn't be able to speak or help the people I'm
Yeah.
helping.
I love you brought me right where my next question is can you tell us a little bit more about how you're taking your experience and turning it into being helpful for other people?
I mean, I think from the beginning, without me realizing it, I was health coaching people who had mold and SIRS. Like I had just been diagnosed and people were seeing me on social media. So I've been coaching people from almost the beginning of my diagnosis with mold and SIRS. Done a lot of webinars on how to recognize mold and SIRS that have been free. Have a lot of educational um, videos on my website where my colleague Bobby and I have done stuff on nervous system and drainage pathways and lives on social media. And then we turned it into like a 20 or 30-minute YouTube
Mm.
because I just, yeah, saw so many pieces that are getting missed and now getting opportunities I've been doing podcasts, but getting opportunities to speak either on stage or virtually at a big event where there's thousands of people. So it's more to bring education, right? Education and awareness, and those who want coaching, and want guidance in the process. Um, yeah, and just listen. A lot of people reach out, right? And sometimes just like what you're doing, I'm listening to their story. I'm giving them hope. Sometimes I know people aren't looking for a coach or they don't have the money for a coach, but I can say to them, hey, rule out that there's mold in your home. Make sure you address the nervous. I can give them some tips and some basics. I can send them my free stuff so that at least whatever they decide to do, they've got some free resources and education.
Yes.
But it was never my intention to do this, right? I would have been a diabetic educator. I was a diabetic educator. I wanted to do diabetes as a coach. I think God had other plans. I could not get away from the mold piece when I was seeing people. Everybody who was coming to me did not know they were in water damage, and I could tell
Yeah.
based on their symptoms, the questions I was asking, and everybody who I had tested was in water damage. So it's like, I give up. I give up. I get it. This is so even though I love talking about Lyme, everybody I meet with Lyme is usually not well because they haven't addressed toxins and mold in their environment and in their body. So so it's been my soapbox has been mold, water damage more than Lyme or SIRS.
Yeah. It's amazing. I have two questions left. One of them is in reflection over your journey. What was probably the most powerful thing that you could say that you chose to do?
The trusting the people I met who were doing the regenerative approach and just my intuition. Because I was doing a lot of shakes as meals as part of the regenerative approach, and I could not eat. I was down to 10 foods, a lot of solid food, and just my intuition and taking that step of faith when nothing else was working with my practitioners and just listening to that pull to give it a go, not really knowing what was going to happen. That was the trajectory that changed my path and my healing for me. It may not be the same for everybody at all because not everybody could eat the way I ate to heal. But for me, that was my turning point. Mm. And a lot of people, it was right before Christmas. My friends were like, "You're what? You know, you're having shakes as your main meals." Well, I couldn't eat much food anyway. And they were just like, "You're not going to have this." I'm like, every time I ate, I had, bladder issues. I had bloating. It was just like, so they didn't get it. They thought I was nuts. And I'm like, no, I need to do something to move the needle. But I didn't know what was possible yet. I just knew there were other people who had had success with it, but nothing else I had tried had worked. So for me, that was like a very pivotal decision because it changed the course of my health. It changed the course of my health coaching because I use the regenerative approach, with people, but listening to their body and what they need. There's no like one diet. I want to say that with healing. And I'm eating very differently now where I'm not sick than I was and what I needed to do. And my husband didn't eat as strictly as I did to heal, and he healed. So I think I tell people you have to listen to your body. And everybody is sort of, we're different, and things need to be personalized for each person. But
Yeah.
yeah, that was my pivotal for me. That was my pivotal moment, for sure.
And really led by intuition, just really tuning in and going, okay, I'm being pulled this way. I'm just going to trust this is where I'm supposed to go. That's not the first time I've heard that. It's like we're in the thick of it and something, there's a light, you
Well,
know.
I was just on social media and something popped up on my feed and it was thyroid related. And I'm like, my doctor and I thought I'd be off my thyroid medicine by now. We really thought the healing journey was stressing the thyroid. And I muscle tested the products and I'm muscle testing. I needed all of them. And I thought, I think I need to do this. And my body temperature is so low. It's been so low for a long time. And I'm like, I'm eating not a lot, eating so healthy, so clean, cleaned up the internal terrain. And my weight isn't bad, but my body's just doesn't look the way it did three,
Right.
4 years ago. If you see pictures of me. And I'm so excited because in 4 days, my body temperature's come up a whole degree. I'm still not at normal. But I feel like I'm on the right track, but that just showed up on my feed. I really wasn't thinking yet about my thyroid. And I was like, yeah, I need to get off this medication. And I don't think it's addressing the root. And I'm excited, to see what happens. And I'd like to be a little bit thinner than where I am because when I started the journey, I was a size 6. I was underweight. And I don't know if you really my weight's not too bad, but size is nowhere near size
I hear
6.
you. I gained. That was one of my biggest symptoms is even at my healthiest, eating the healthiest, working out so hard when we were living in mold, I gained weight very quickly. And I'm still working on trying to get rid of it. Is my
It
body
is
doesn't
it
want to
it
let go.
is such a process. Yeah, I gained weight slowly, but like I said, my body is like mush because the healing journey has been so intense, lack of sleep, adrenals tanking. So I move my body, but I'm not the kind of active I was before because if I only get 2 hours sleep, I'm just not I could do it earlier in the journey. I could go for a walk or a hike for a few hours, but now the number of years that the sleep because of pain was, it's just sort of, I'm learning to listen and understand this is just a temporary season. And so my goals are to get right stronger and more fit and bring in weight. I've done weights and resistance, but I have to sort of listen to what my body's doing. And, but I think most of my clients, right, they have this intuition. They'll say, oh, I bought this supplement and we'll muscle test. Yeah, their body wants it, it needs it. So it's fun to see that so many people sort of gravitate
Mhm.
toward what they need. Um, and and we're all different, you
Yeah.
know. So I love when my patients do that. They show me all the stuff they bought, and I'm so glad I get to say, yeah, we can use it. Because sometimes, you know, people buy stuff that they don't need.
Yeah.
Um,
They're
yeah, so that
up with a whole basket full of all the different layers that they've been trying. Yep.
I have thousands and thousands and thou I mean, I have a linen closet full of supplements that are organized by category just because my journey was so long. And I thought, I'm not going to get rid of anything. And I'm glad I didn't because sometimes you can go back and
Yeah.
use something because it's so expensive.
Yeah, for sure. I'm so grateful for your time and for you sharing your story. If people want to be able to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to find you?
They can either go to healthcoachingbyheather.com, my website, a lot of education under the education tab, or they can go to healthcoachingbyheather@gmail.com and email me. On my website, I do free discovery calls. Those are really for people who are looking, right, to work with someone and guide them. It's not a prescriptive call. You know, it's to hear your story and to share my approach and see if it's a good if we're both a good fit for each other, because there are times where I tell people we're not a good fit.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, it's not meant to, hey, I just want to get your opinion
Yeah,
on my ERMI results. It's not meant for that. It really is meant for somebody who's looking to work with somebody.
that's great. That's fantastic. Heather, this has been insightful, powerful, wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing with us.
Well, and thank you for listening.
Absolutely.
Um, and you know, making this space where other people can be heard.
Oh my gosh. It's such a privilege. It's really special to get to hear these different journeys and, each person unfolding this complicated emotional, just it's so hard for everybody that I've spoken with. There's all these different layers that are involved. In when somebody has this, it always seems like there's a shift, like a gear shift that happens. There's some sort of event that all of a sudden we realize it's mold, right? There's something that created this overflow of particular symptoms that we can remember. This is where it showed up. And for almost all of us, once we're in the healing pathway, we can look back and go, oh, it happened way before that point. And here we are,
Right.
this bucket just overflowing with all this
Yeah.
stuff,
And
right?
that's and I want to encourage people, like, it isn't ever just mold. Like, mold will tip the bucket. Um, but if you're dealing with mold, it's not just about dealing with mold and mycotoxins. Be sure that you're dealing with the other things that are in your bucket, like trauma and parasites and viruses and bacteria and other toxins, because everything we do to empty what's coming into the bucket and open up the bucket so the drain can things can drain out, it's going to bring down that systemic inflammation, right? So even if somebody's in mold, if they're cutting down on the skin care, the hair care, you know, you and I, like, we're not, I don't think you're dyeing your hair, and I stopped dyeing my hair a long time ago, not knowing that I was so toxic, but it was just a choice. Some people will choose to dye because they feel better, but it's we get to choose what toxins we bring in and
Right.
what toxins we let go. I live right by a golf course, never thought about it like buying a house, right? The golf course is like not far at all. Like, we get golf balls in our yard, and I'm like, every time I do a frequency scan on my body, there are pesticides on that scan, even though that I'm on the low dose binders all the time, because and I'm not out there all the time, but I'm getting exposed. So the more we can do to decrease, you know, our exposure to stuff, it's going to be helpful.
And again, the more we learn, as we
Yeah,
learn and we
as
continue.
we have the bandwidth to
Yeah.
learn, right? Because certain seasons, I just got like a water distiller. And I wish I had done it sooner, but I don't think I would have had the bandwidth to make the water, just not that it's hard, but you're just when you're sick and in the muck of it, sometimes you do have to really just think about what can I handle right now and just take that one step that you can take and don't worry about all the other things you think you should do because it's a hard journey when you're healing from
Yeah.
mold, from Lyme, from SIRS. And you have to be mindful of your energy,
Yeah.
and you have to be doing some things that bring you joy, even if it's within your limitations and boundaries, because if it's spending time with friends or being out in nature or painting or whatever it is, um, it's just such an important part of our mental health when you're feeling miserable to have those things that bring you joy.
Absolutely. My mind goes to when we were we stayed in an apartment that was moldy. Eventually, I'll share my story. I'll get there. But
Well, and if you ever want to share it on my page, you're welcome to.
oh, so sweet.
If you want somebody to, I love interviewing people. If you want to do that, we could do that.
Thank you for offering that. Absolutely. But when we were in that apartment, one of the things that I did, I love crafting, and I dove into paper crafting
Mhm.
like it was, my second job. I was in it all the time. And the positive feedback, really inside my body from doing the creativity on repeat. I think that's part of what got me through that time.
Well, and I bet it calmed your nervous system
Yes,
too, because
probably.
when you're focused like that, I did like scrapbooking and things when I didn't know what was wrong with me, and it totally distracted me from the pain. And then I did quilting, and out here I learned to paint. But I don't know. I haven't been as creative yet. I think my creativity has been in my work now,
Mhm.
not in crafting. And if I do something, I want to do something that I've never done before, not that I relate to being sick,
Love
if that
that.
makes
Yes.
sense.
Oh, I love that. Amazing. Well, Heather, thank you. I'm going to just hit stop here. There we go. Stop recording.